Retire wealthy at the age of 65 or enjoy wealth at the age of 30 while still capable of doing so. In this video, I'll be going over exactly what you need to do with your time and how you should be spending your money to set yourself up financially so you can start building and enjoying wealth, not in your 60s but in your 30s. By investing 10% of your salary over a 30-year period, you're basically a guaranteed millionaire. Great. So now that we are all doing that, surely we can take some risk to see whether we can get there a bit faster. Now, in order to achieve wealth as soon as in your 30s, you will have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and also willing to make sacrifices early in your life. Look at it this way: the earlier you start to sacrifice, the earlier you will see results. I'm Charl Swanepoel, and if like me, this is something you are willing to do, we can break the norms and achieve wealth much earlier in our lives. Starting with the first piece of advice, which is get a job. Now, I would highly recommend you go and get a job as soon as possible, because I really believe the experience you will gain will be invaluable later in your life, since you will learn how to interact with adults and to manage your money. And most importantly, you'll very quickly start to appreciate the value of your time. Early in my life, I worked in two very different fields, one being a technical assistant at a school, and the other working as a construction site manager for my dad. And I very quickly realized that I didn't want to do either for the rest of my life. So growing up, I fell in love with cycling as a sport. And after school, I only had one thing on my mind, and that was becoming a professional cyclist. I took a gap year after high school with the intent of focusing on my cycling career and going to Europe. And to make a long story short, that year just happened to be the year of 2020. I soon realized that I won't be making any income from cycling very soon, and that I had to do what I always said I wouldn't, to get a job. In hindsight, I wish I started working straight after school, and even though I earned less than minimum wage for the first year, what I learned about myself was much more valuable. And the most valuable thing I learned was that I will not be working for someone else for the rest of my life. There's a quote in the book, The Millionaire Fastlane, that says, "By working faithfully for 8 hours a day, you eventually get to become the manager and work 12 hours a day." Thanks, but no thanks. For some reason, early in my life, I made up my mind that I will not go to college, and today I'm very thankful for whatever triggered that decision. It might have been to do with my obsession with becoming a professional cyclist, or just the fact that I hated school and that I couldn't see myself behind books for the next couple of years. In the third tip, I'll explain to you why I'm so thankful for not going to college or university. This brings me to my next piece of advice, which is staying out of student loan debt. It was reported that in 2022, there's more than $1.75 trillion worth of outstanding loans. What is even worse is that many young people are forced by parents or society to go to college because it's seen as the safe route. Now, if you know what you want to do and you need to go to a certain college to pursue that career path, then by all means do so. But as mentioned, for someone like myself that didn't know what I want to do with my life, I wanted to stay as far as possible from student loan debt, as well as save the financial burden for my parents. This meant that I will have to take things into my own hands, and this brings me to my next piece of advice, number 3, which is investing in yourself. I know this sounds cliche and it's something we don't want to hear because the results is not immediately noticeable. However, if you are in your 20s, this might just be the single most valuable piece of advice and have the highest ROI in the long run. I think my obsession with personal development and investing in myself started while I was working my first job out of school. At that time, two things were certain. I will not go to college, and I will not work for someone else for the rest of my life. In my life, I would say that was the blue pill, red pill scene from The Matrix. Something inside of me knew there was more to life than working a 9 to 5, even though I'm still doing that at the moment. But I think it was the switch that flipped in my head that made me obsessed with escaping the Matrix. The funny thing is, at that time I was only a working adult for about 3 months, but that was enough for me to know that I will not participate in the rat race for any longer than absolutely necessary. I always thought I was the odd one out that didn't know what he was going to do with his life, and I couldn't understand that all my friends already had their paths laid out in front of them by the time we walked out of school. At that time, I was spending about 3 hours a day on my bicycle, and when you spend that amount of time on the road, you will see some very nice cars, whether you like it or not. For some reason, it just didn't sit well with me. So I would see a nice car driving towards me, and yes, for a second I would admire the beauty of it, but I always found myself trying to see through the tinted windows to see what the driver looks like, more than I was admiring the beauty of the car. Is it a person in their 60s? Nothing special. Probably enjoying retirement, and good on them. However, every now and then I would see a stunning sports car, and behind the steering wheel I spot a person maybe 10 years my senior, maybe even less. Now that observation would consume my mind for the rest of my 3-hour ride, and I would feel the frustration building up because I knew that person found the glitch in the Matrix. That person knows something that the other 98.9% of us don't know. I think this played a massive role in my obsession with obtaining more knowledge, improving myself, learning about business and finance, and learning about the rich. So, as you could have probably guessed, I went and bought my first personal development book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and fast forward 2 years, I read about 32 more. Now, am I saying you should indulge in personal development books and you will become rich? Absolutely not. However, I do believe that everyone in their 20s should be investing in themselves, whether it be through personal development books, courses. Just do something that your future self will thank you for. I am willing to sacrifice my 20s to be financially free in my 30s. Now, this takes a lot of sacrifice, and it's by all means not as fun as going out on weekends. It's a very lonely journey and it's only just getting started. I'm not saying you shouldn't have fun in your 20s. I mean, if there's time to do so, it is now. But just get clear about your short and long-term goals and reflect to see whether your actions are bringing you any closer to those goals. Now, Dave Ramsey will probably cringe for what I'm about to say, but it's something that I wish I did early in my life, and that is to get a credit card. Most of us grow up hearing about the destructive nature of debt and also how it's one of the main reasons people can't escape the rat race. But the reality is, in order to get the lowest possible interest rates on a mortgage or loan, you will need a good credit score, and for that you will need debt. All you need to do to get started is to open a credit card or some account at a store, put some expenses on it every month, and just pay it off in full each month. The reason you should start doing this as soon as possible is because in your 20s you have the time to build up a good credit score before you need to go and finance anything. Now, I have to give credit where credit is due, pun intended, to Graham Stephan for hammering on the importance of building a good credit score early in your life. Now, number 5, live below your means. I firmly believe that your teens and your 20s really are the time to live below your means, save as much as possible, even work overtime, and start investing. It is during this time that we need to push ourselves as hard as possible to find out where our limits are. And if there's a time to live frugally and below your means, your 20s really is the time to do so. I mean, during this time, no one really cares whether you're living with your parents or whether you're driving an old car. For example, I'm 20 years old and I still live with my parents. I'm very fortunate to have a car that's fully paid off that I got for my 18th birthday. Now, this car doesn't have AC, and where I live, temperatures above 35 degrees Celsius is about your average summer's day. I have an hour-long commute to work and back every day, and even though I can afford a new car, I am more than happy to endure the heat if that means I can save and invest money and escape the rat race sooner than later. Of course, moving to the office will make my life a lot easier, but at what cost? The cost of delaying my financial freedom for another 10 years? No thanks. At the moment, I'm able to maximize my contributions to my Roth IRA or tax-free savings account, as well as invest another 25% of my salary in myself, whether it be in books or in this YouTube channel. Moving closer to my job would more than double my expenses. And in fact, I've managed to make my 2-hour commute every day very productive by listening to audiobooks on 1.5 speed. If I didn't have to commute to work, I would probably not set out the time to sit down and read every day for 2 hours. So in my opinion, my curse is also my blessing. Now let's talk about investing your hard-earned money and where you should start if you are in your 20s. Open a retirement account. Now, just to be clear, I am not a financial advisor, and nor am I an advocate of saving for retirement so you can retire at the age of 65 with $1 million. That being said, opening a retirement account will end up saving you money in taxes. And if there's one account I recommend you open as soon as possible, it'll be a Roth IRA, or for my fellow South Africans, a tax-free savings account. Now, a Roth IRA allows you to contribute up to $6,000 per year, and any profits you make in this account will be tax-free after the age of 59.5. The reason this is my favorite account and the account you should open first is because the money you invest is what's known as post-tax money, and you will have compound interest working in your favor without having to worry about taxes. I know in Canada and South Africa this account is known as a tax-free savings account, and here in SA you are allowed to contribute 3,000 Rand monthly or a total of 36,000 Rand a year of your taxed income, and your money will grow and compound tax-free. Now, you have a lifetime contribution limit of 500,000 Rand. However, you are allowed to withdraw your funds at any time. Your retirement account shouldn't be your be-all, end-all, and I'm by no means saying that once you max out your contributions to this account, that you can sit back and relax and wait for retirement. I just believe we need to seize every opportunity to protect your money against inflation, and if we can do so in a tax advantage account, I don't see any downsides. Now, on to the next piece of advice, which is to build multiple streams of income. Most of us only have one or maybe two streams of income. One being your earned income from your 9 to 5 job and maybe some interest from a savings account. The main problem with this scenario is that you're only one unfortunate event away from being broke. One layoff means you are stripped from your entire income source. The other issue with only having your job as your income source is that your income is fixed to your time investment. Time has no leverage and is perhaps the most valuable currency in this world. So the sooner we can detach our time from our income, the sooner we will be on our path to wealth. While time has no leverage, money can be leveraged to infinity. According to the IRS, the average millionaire has about 7 streams of income. Now don't let this demotivate you because this is a process and it takes time to get there. It's just a great example of how money is being leveraged to increase income and income sources. Because the one thing we all have in common is that everyone has 24 hours a day and that most of us can only work about 9 hours. Now, the fastest way of increasing your sources of income is by starting a side hustle. Think about it this way. Why are we willing to work 9 hours a day to help someone else live their dream, but we are not willing to even spend a fraction of that time working on ourselves and our future? Let that sink in. Now, as you build your streams of income, you will require discipline and follow the next step, which is to avoid lifestyle inflation. As soon as your income increases, you are going to be very tempted to inflate your lifestyle accordingly. Now, this is the last thing you should do and the number one thing keeping most of us stuck in the rat race. Lifestyle inflation is a term used to describe the tendency of our spending to always keep up with our earnings. I personally believe the biggest reason for lifestyle inflation is our inability of delaying gratification. I strongly believe in delayed gratification and therefore for the foreseeable future, even if my income increases, I will not change my lifestyle, but rather invest the extra money into myself or my side hustle, which is this YouTube channel. Reinvesting any excess money is the fastest way to grow your business exponentially, and by simply doing this and delaying gratification, you will eventually reap the fruits. The final piece of advice is easier said than done, but if you are in your 20s, there will be no better time to start taking risks. All events of wealth are precluded by a process, backstory of trial, risk, hard work, and sacrifice. If you try to skip process, you'll never experience events. MJ DeMarco. If you are in your 20s or even in your 30s, you have time on your side to fail and to start over again. I believe that the worst place to be in your 20s is firstly your comfort zone as well as being complacent. It's okay to fail over and over in your 20s because the more you fail, the closer you get to success. Starting this YouTube channel was and still is a big risk that also want to improve their life and finances. For the past few years, I've spent the majority of my time watching educational videos on YouTube about personal finance, investing, personal development, and business. I've been religiously watching the top YouTubers in this niche, such as Graham Stephan, Ali Abdaal, and Andre Jik. One day, while consuming my daily dose of educational videos on 1.5 speed, a big what if popped up in my head. What if I stopped consuming and started producing? What if I can share some of my knowledge that I have obtained over these years by educating myself? What if I have been consuming all of this knowledge to make myself feel better about not putting the knowledge to work? What if I started a YouTube channel? While these guys have been growing their communities, producing, improving, and impacting the lives of millions, I have only been consuming. Gaining so much knowledge but doing nothing with it because I felt that I'm not ready yet. The reality is that by this time I probably know more than 80% of people my age about personal finance, business, and personal development because of my obsession with it. I had to swallow a very bitter pill. What if I started a year ago? How would my life have changed if I started producing consistently instead of consuming? By now I would have had a year's worth of failure, experience, and improving under my belt. While I was afraid of taking the risk of starting, the feeling of regret for not taking the risk earlier far exceeded any possible downside of taking the risk in the first place. I know I have a lot to learn and I know my next 50 videos will probably suck, but at least the 50th video won't suck as much as this one. I feel like this is a risk worth taking and I owe it to my future self to see what a few years of hard work, education, and discipline can accomplish for both me and my community of 24 subscribers. See you guys in the next one.